Brace up, Zimbabweans, because today I'm going to bring you a story that shows what a flippy-floppy government we have. Zimbabwe's government never fails to entertain. In yet another episode of confusion, chaos, and clueless leadership, if you remember, the regime ordered local authorities to remove vendors from the streets within 48 hours. Yes, that order that came from Garwe, you still remember, right? Why? Who knows? Maybe someone in high office took a drive and was suddenly offended by the sight of hard-working Zimbabweans trying to make an honest living. Maybe the ruling elites, who have never had to hustle a day in their lives, decided that street vending was now an eyesore. Or maybe, just maybe, someone needed a distraction from real problems like inflation, joblessness, and a currency so weak it needs therapy. Either way, when ZANU-PF wakes up with an idea, disaster usually follows. So you already know this was going to end in chaos. So the government issued its grand decree, and like loyal foot soldiers, the councils got to work. In places like Mutare and Chinoi, council police took to the streets, determined to rid them of vendors as instructed. But there was just one problem. The vendors were not about to pack up their livelihoods and disappear into thin air. After all, where were they supposed to go? Were they expected to sit at home and wait for the government to suddenly become competent and create actual jobs? Please. That would have been like waiting for rain in a desert. You will die of thirst before it ever happens. Naturally, the vendors fought back. There were clashes, there was chaos, and there was a lot of shouting. Most of it directed at the councils, who were simply following orders. The whole thing quickly escalated into a full-blown mess. Because as we know, Zimbabwean authorities never think more than one step ahead. Did they honestly believe vendors would just pack up and say, thank you, Your Excellencies, for starving our families so elegantly? No, they did what any desperate and oppressed people would do. They resisted. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when people push back against the government for its nonsense, things only get more interesting. But then, in the most spectacular twist, the vendors managed to take their grievances straight to the president himself. Yeah, you heard that right. They went to the State House to seek an audience with the president. And what did His Excellency do? Did he take responsibility for his own government's directive? Did he defend the councils for implementing his administration policies? Of course not. That would require accountability. And we all know that that's as rare in Zimbabwe politics as free and fair elections. Instead, Mnangagwa was spoon-fed a different version of events. One that painted councils as the villains harassing vendors. Suddenly, the same government that had backed orders to clear the streets was pretending to be shocked and appalled that its instructions were being followed. If there were an Olympic event for hypocrisy, these guys would take gold. Here is what the orders looked like when they were given by government. Let's listen to what Garwe said.
The government has noted with great concern the proliferation of illegal vendors in central business districts and surrounding areas in the cities and towns across the country, and particularly the influx of night vendors or night trading, which has created serious health, safety and security concerns throughout the country. It has also been observed that the mushrooming of these unregulated marketplaces disrupts the operations of legal registered and law-abiding traders, leading to increased unfair competition and potential financial losses. Illegal vending perpetuates unsanitary conditions as vendors operate in areas without potable water and ablution facilities, which poses a significant risk for disease outbreaks, diseases such as typhoid, dysentery, and cholera. In light of these pressing issues, the government is directing all local authorities to clear vendors from undesignated points within 48 hours from now.
So now, we have a situation where councils are scratching their heads, wondering what happened. Yesterday they were good, loyal citizens carrying out government policy. Today they are being thrown under the bus and blamed for merely following instructions. Tomorrow, who knows? Maybe the government will accuse them of witchcraft, corruption, or, heaven forbid, working with the opposition. The way this regime operates, anything is possible. And I tell you, stay tuned for the next episode of Blame Everyone But Ourselves. The level of confusion in this administration is something to behold. It's as if the government is being run by a group of toddlers playing Simon Says. One day they say remove vendors and the councils obey. The next day they scream, who told you to remove vendors? And suddenly it's the council's fault. It's almost as if Zimbabwe is being ruled by a malfunctioning WhatsApp group where messages are sent, deleted, and then resent with a completely different meaning. And the worst part, they do this with a straight face, expecting Zimbabweans to keep falling for it. The arrogance is almost as impressive as the incompetence. Now, this same Garwe who gave the order that we saw came back after the meeting with the president and the vendors and gave this speech. Listen to what he says.
We are very happy with the very productive and very constructive meeting with His Excellency and the representatives of the vendors throughout the country. Key takeaways for the Minister of Local Government are: one, that we must improve the relationship between the vendors and the local authorities in the various local authorities in the country. Two, we must involve the vendors in the revision of bylaws or preparation of any new bylaws. This was a topical issue. Three, that the municipal police must stop forthwith harassing vendors. There are better ways of communicating. Harassing is not a better way of communicating. The ministry will now take leadership in reining in all local authorities that are ill-treating vendors. But more importantly, that night vending is not allowed. His Excellency was very clear on that. Those that have been operating during the night are not part of the registered vendors. These are people that are coming in and out, because night vending is coming with it. One, there are no ablution facilities, which becomes a health scare. Number two, the people who are night vending are creating fertile ground for drug and substance abuse activities. The same people are creating fertile ground for those that are bringing into the country from other countries counterfeit products that are now being sold at night, and they find themselves in people's homes, which is another health scare. We are very grateful to His Excellency for providing leadership and direction, and the vendors are now comfortable communicating regularly with the ministers. And then the President said these doors are open. If vendors have got issues, they must always, through the ministries, come in dialogue with the President. It is also important to note that the President has directed the Minister of Local Government and Public Works, working together with the Minister of Women Affairs, Community Small and Medium Enterprise Development, to ensure that we provide sustainable, modern working spaces for vendors. We are going to be doing that with the
Okay, you heard that from the horse's mouth. Now, let's talk about the vendors for a second. These are people who wake up at the crack of dawn, push carts, dodge police raids, and hustle just to afford a meal in an economy that the same government has turned into a financial graveyard. And instead of creating policies to help them, the government treats them like pests, chasing them, arresting them, and confiscating their goods. The same government that has failed to create jobs failed to control prices, and failed to provide basic services, now thinks its biggest problem is vendors selling tomatoes on the roadside. If misplaced priorities were a person, it would be wearing a scarf and running the country. And let's not forget the irony of it all. While vendors are being chased away, ruling party elites are busy looting state funds, grabbing land, and awarding themselves million-dollar tenders. Corrupt ministers live in mansions, drive luxury cars, and send their children to expensive schools abroad, all while telling ordinary citizens that vending is disorderly. Really? A vendor selling airtime is disorderly. But a minister looting millions from public coffers is just good governance. Make it make sense. Actually, don't bother. It's impossible. At the heart of this circus is the government's addiction to blame shifting. Nothing is ever their fault. If the economy collapses, it's sanctions. If elections are rigged, it's Western interference. If vendors are removed from the streets, it's the council's fault. This government would blame the sun for setting if it meant avoiding responsibility for its own failures. At this rate, they might even accuse oxygen of being an enemy of the state. Nothing would surprise us anymore. But here's the kicker. None of this is new. ZANU-PF has been playing this blame game for decades. They create a crisis, pretend they had nothing to do with it, and then look for a scapegoat, rinse and repeat. It's the same tired script, and yet somehow they expect Zimbabweans to keep falling for it. But the people are not stupid. They see the games, they see the hypocrisy, and they see the incompetence. And sooner or later, even the best circus act loses its audience. So how long before Zimbabweans change the channel? Or are we still stuck on this never-ending reality show of failure? So what happens next? Probably more confusion. Maybe the government will issue another directive, then deny it ever did. Maybe they will blame NGOs, the opposition, or even the weather for the vendor chaos. Or maybe, just maybe, they will finally realize that governing requires actual leadership, not just issuing random orders and then feigning surprise when those orders are carried out. But that would require common sense, and well, let's not hold our breath. In the meantime, vendors will continue to hustle, councils will continue to take the fall, and the government will continue to pretend it's innocent. And you know what? To save face, they just maintained a part of the directive which says night vending is not allowed. So they continued to say night vending is not allowed. Remember, we told you that this idea of removing vendors wasn't because they wanted cleanliness in town. It wasn't because they wanted to rid of drugs being sold at night or whatever you. It had to do with the 31st March uprising, which is upcoming, so that it does not become spontaneous with people joining in from town, with vendors joining in from town. So the government can pretend business is as usual in Zimbabwe. But hey, while they figure out the next excuse, why don't you do something logical for once? Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned, because if there's one thing you can count on, is that this government will always give us something to laugh or cry about.